All right, I'll just get chatting kind of casually in the beginning. And then if anybody comes in, they don't feel too bad. I'm Stacia. I'm a dietitian that comes to campus somewhat frequently. Hi, how are you? Good, how are you? Make yourself at home. There's a delicious lunch over there. So yeah, I come in and do these presentations that I think are really fun. I love sharing some of this nutrition information with you. I also provide one-on-one counseling for staff and faculty. I don't do students because there's an amazing student dietitian, Leela, in the Health and Wellness Center. So we actually work together on a lot of projects. So her position is, in the Wellness Center, and then I contract and kind of bring up fill in some of the other gaps on campus. So it's really great to see all of you here, lots of new faces. So March is National Nutrition Month, super exciting. So yeah, we had to get something in this month. So I decided to do kind of a myth busting, talking about some of those hot topics that are out there. And then at the end, talking about how to navigate nutrition information in the media, just all of the random information that's out there, because it's an interesting topic. It's an interesting profession to be in, because there is so much extra information out there. You don't see a ton of surgery recommendations to do at home. You leave that to the surgeon. But nutrition, it's like everybody's an expert, everybody has advice, and so things can get really complicated, contraindicating information, controversial information. And the other piece that fits into there is that nutrition is an ongoing, so relatively new topic and research when we think of the history of science and research. So we do find new information out that maybe goes against old ways of thinking. One of my favorite examples is eggs. For a really long time, right, we were told don't eat eggs. They have lots of cholesterol. They'll raise your cholesterol. Hi, how are you? And now new research was performed, and it shows that cholesterol in food does very little to raise our blood cholesterol levels. So eggs are safe again. But that happens all the time with nutrition research, right? You hear one day coffee and wine are another big one, right? One day coffee is evil. The next day you should drink it. So there's a lot of information out there to decode and demystify. So hopefully there'll be a lot of time for questions at the end. But if you have a burning question, you can always ask. I'm pretty informal. So today we're going to hit some major topics, but there's always so much more, right? So please, if you have a question, not about anything I talk about today, don't feel afraid to ask it at the end. I love having a discussion. So the topics we're going to cover today are organic foods, dieting, hot topic, supplements, detoxing and cleansing, and navigating the media. So that's that piece we'll kind of talk through how to sort through all of those nutrition claims that you hear. Okay, so my biggest takeaway is organic does not mean healthier. I know, whoa. So organic, something being certified organic does very little, if nothing, to change the nutritional value of a food. Okay, so when we talk about organic, it's more so how it was made, not how it's going to benefit you or affect you in your body. Right, so there are lots of stipulations and mandates that a farm needs to go through to be approved, USDA approved organic. Some very specific, very strenuous regulations that they have to meet. So For example, my husband and I have a small hobby farm at home. We have organic beef, organic eggs. We're not USDA certified. It would cost thousands and thousands of dollars for us. And we have, we sell, meat maybe to a few people, family and friends. I gave away most of our eggs. And so additionally, if you buy land, you don't know what has happened in the last 5, 10, 15 years, what chemicals, what processes they've used. And so it can be hard to then get a USDA certification for organic without spending a lot of time not redoing the land, but using no chemicals, none of these processes before you can get that certification. With soil, with plant foods, you can't do certain things like using certain chemicals, pesticides, fertilizers. Animals need to eat only organic foods. And then animals must have access to the outdoors, which can be interpreted many ways. And I think I maybe touch on that in the next slide. But and then, does anybody know what a ruminant is? Animal. So it's like a cow is a ruminant. They have multiple chambers, right? We often say a cow has multiple stomachs. It's not necessarily true. They have multiple chambers of their stomach. And so we are not ruminants. We have one stomach. Horses, dogs, cats, there's lots of non-ruminants. But ruminants, deer, cow, elk, have to have access to pasture because grass is so important for them. Okay, so what most consumers don't realize is that not all farms get that certification. So you might be able to find some really great locally sourced organic foods at a lower price point than going to the store and getting that USDA seal because they haven't gone through that really expensive process. And then these regulations have no influence on nutrition makeup. So the amount of calories, the amount of carbs, the amount of fat doesn't change because something wasn't given a pesticide or a fertilizer. So a lot of times, how do I want to say that? More biased or more narrow-minded professionals or influencers will push that organic theme for the reason of weight, even, health outcomes. There's little to no evidence that does it. What does change or what, oops, I don't know if I can go back. Okay. So the debate is less nutrition-based, although media makes it nutrition-based. It's more ethical and personal, right? If you have ethical boundaries or beliefs that, in your family or for yourself, your household, you say, okay, I want to eat foods that I know did not have XYZ chemical on them. I want to eat foods that I know the animals were able to, live their best life, be on pasture, get sunshine, free range, things like that. That's where the organic makes a big difference in your lifestyle, not how many calories you're getting or, how much sodium necessarily. So the other issue it brings up is food accessibility and inequality concerns among areas, geographically, cultural differences. Hi. So for example, there tends to be less access to farm fresh organic foods in an inner city, right? Where a lot of residents get their food from a market, from a corner market, a general store. There's not that plethora that you would see in a larger store, a farm market outside in a more rural area. So you can rest easy knowing that eating an organic apple is not nutritionally superior to an inorganic apple. There are some minor differences in some foods, like eggs. Organic eggs have some higher levels of vitamins and minerals. Slightly. And very, very little difference though in those macronutrients, very little difference in fat and protein. But it's hard, it's more likely speaking to the fact that organic chickens often are outside more on grass, on pasture, eating bugs with other animals in a more natural life cycle than caged non-organic. So it can't be 100% attributed to organic. There are huge benefits for animals to be out on pasture that do affect. Yeah.
I was just going to say, so if we're aware of a local farm that has all of the practices, like being outside, but didn't get that organic label, then you can probably guess those eggs are going to be, for example, equally nutritious to the.
Absolutely. And what I'm talking about is like vitamin A being, 100 milligram, difference, like that really, really minuscule amount, where if you're eating a varied diet, if you eat fruits and vegetables and whole grains, you're getting all of those nutrients anyways. But I can't think of a single, being in an agricultural setting, growing up in an agricultural setting, I can't think of a single farmer who wouldn't want to talk to you and share how they do things if you were to ask. Farmers love sharing information about how they do things. So, a red flag would be if you're going to a local farm to pick up eggs and you ask and they say, oh, I can't talk about it. I don't want to talk about it. I'm not going to tell you. That's, run in the other direction, because what would happen or should happen would be like, let me show you a chicken coop, right? Let me show you what I'm doing. And so you can learn a lot and get a lot of pride in, that could be a whole separate presentation, is the agricultural system. But yeah, I heavily encourage seeking out local farms, even if you don't want organic produce or meats, right? There are really great, really great local farms who just make great products. Okay, so this is my organic example. Yeah.
Does it matter what they eat? For example, I know a farmer and she eats Walmart food that's GMO. Or
feeds her chickens. So she wouldn't be able to get an organic certification, but there's no evidence right now saying that changes the nutrition component of the food. Okay, so this is a real life example. Someone offered me, this is my favorite. Peanut butter cups are beyond my favorite candy. And someone offered me some and said, well, this is great because they're organic, so they're healthier. And I said, oh, okay. So let's look at the label together. Even though I have glasses, it's very hard for me to see. So this is a kind of a typical peanut butter cup 2-pack. 230 calories. So let's go to our non-organic, evil bad candy. Oh my gosh, it's only 210 calories. Very little difference. I'm not trying to harp on calories here, but there's a lot of nuance to organic and labeling food good and bad. And this is just one example I wanted to show, that it's so easy to say, oh, this is organic, it's healthier for me. And really it's barely different, or there's, benefits to both. The other thing, Reese's has more protein. The organic one has more double the saturated fat, right? So you have to look at your food at more than face value. And I'm not recommending that you examine every single food label. In fact, I don't recommend that. That can border on obsession if you're really comparing everything. It's just to drive home the point that just because someone has a label, organic, gluten-free, superfood, it doesn't necessarily mean that it's going to be this ultra healthy, superior product. Yeah.
So I have a question. How much impact does the chemicals, the pesticides, whatever that the farmer used on the individual ingredients in a processed food, how does that impact us if otherwise the nutrient value is the same?
Yeah, so we're talking about the effects of pesticides and herbicides and fertilizers on disease processes like cancer. There's, a lot of research going on with that. Other conditions, I've read things recently about, and these are correlative studies, these aren't definitive studies, but, high levels of pesticides and fertilizers and Alzheimer's, that mental health, anxiety, depression, and then the cancer is always a big risk with those. But you have to pause and if you're really going to go down this route of, okay, I want to eliminate everything, you also have to understand that there are things that organic farmers can use, right? So it really is so personal based on what lifestyle you choose. It's an ethical debate. It's a personal ethical boundary that you have to set for your personal eating system, and it's not nutrition based. Does that help?
I think so. I think what you're saying is everything being equal, you have the opportunity and want to do organic, go for it. But that means if you don't have organic available to you, you could still eat the other product and gain benefit.
100%. Yeah, 100%. Yeah.
I was gonna just insert one other thing about the ethical
Yeah.
thing. So I buy organic bananas. They cost a lot more than regular bananas. The banana is exactly the same as the one in the other banana skin, but the pesticides aren't good for the environment back there.
Right.
Where they're.
Right. Yeah, that's a very good
That's why you
point.
don't get.
And they're not being sprayed on the person who's.
Right.
Right, exactly.
it's-
That's
right,
the
yeah, yeah.
environmental.
It's not a nutrition issue.
Yeah, that's a great point that I really was skipping over. I'm glad you brought that up. There's a very large environmental impact on the chemicals that we're using in our food system. So yeah, I'm going to move on just for time's sake, but those are, if you have more questions about that, bring that up at the end. Okay, so this section is about dieting. So we live in a society that has the thin ideal, right? That everyone must be pursuing thinness to be healthy. And it's really, we've created this. The last time I looked, which was probably 2022, we were up to a $9 billion industry for weight loss, and weight loss diets. And it's so funny because anyone who's been on a diet and it hasn't worked will say, well, I didn't have enough willpower, or I didn't try hard enough. And no one ever says, that's so funny. It's the diet, right? Because if the diets worked, we wouldn't need a $9 billion industry to make better, greater, brander diets and restrictions. So this part is kind of honing in on I'm a registered dietitian. That's why I'm here, but I'm an intuitive eating counselor. So I do a lot of anti-diet work. I do a lot of eating disorder prevention and treatment. And I'm passionate about working with people who have disordered eating. And so this section is, near and dear to my heart, but it's quite controversial, and it causes quite a debate. But so I'll start anyways, or I'll back up and say, this is a great diagram to kind of, look at and turn inward and reflect on. It's called the dieter's dilemma. And it shows you how cyclical this process is, right? I'm sure everyone knows or has personal experience with dieting, going off the diet, dieting again, going off the diet, dieting again, right? And so that's what this circle is showing. And so you start up at the top with a desire to be thin from social pressure. Our healthcare system is very weight-based. Even though BMI is relatively or incredibly, depending on who you ask, inaccurate. And so, we really push that. Every disease out there could be solved with weight loss, which, is just so impractical and not helpful, and causes a great deal of damage to quite a few people. So we have this desire to be thin, right? That thin ideal. going to solve everything. So we pick up a diet. There's hundreds out there that we could talk about. So we'll say keto because that one's quite popular. So you start keto dieting, you cut out all your carbs or as many as you possibly can. Maybe you have some weight loss, right? And then you start having cravings and reduce self-control because restriction leads to an overwhelming desire to eat that food, increased thoughts, increased binging. So this part is really that like self-destructive area of dieting, because then we see this loss of control, this overeating, that guilt moment, where why can't I just try harder? I don't have enough willpower, to the regain of lost weight. And then it just goes and goes and goes. So research has shown that dieting almost always results in rebound weight. And that means that you gain the same amount you lost or more, oftentimes more. And so you keep going around and around in the circle, and it's never ending. Obesity, right, which don't love that word, but weight gain, or a lot of weight gain, is one of the side effects of dieting. So we'll move on from there, but it's hard to, to pick someone out in your head who's gone on a diet, one, lost the weight, and then never had to do anything ever again, right? Because your body isn't meant to have that restriction period, which we'll talk about more in a second. Okay, the damaging of diet. So these are the physical, biological effects that have been shown from dieting. And I just want to pause and say, I'm not saying starvation. I'm not saying having an eating disorder. I'm not saying being anorexic. I'm saying dieting, right? Which is so common in our society, right? So we retain more fat. So you kind of, have that oxymoron there, like, well, I wanted to diet. But being in that state of restriction, your body doesn't know you're on a diet. Your internal physiology, biology, chemical makeup doesn't say, oh, okay, yeah, she's doing keto this week. I remember. It says, okay, I'm in a deficit, in a calorie deficit, in a fat deficit, in a carb deficit, in a protein deficit. I don't know when I'm going to get food again. I don't know when the starvation period is going to end. So I'm going to turn into defense mode, right? I'm going to turn into survival mode, it's called. And our enzymes that help store fat double. Another thing that's related to that is our metabolism slows down. So your body is saying, okay, I haven't got enough calories for 2 weeks. I don't know when this is going to end. So what can I turn down? How can I start to use less energy and less energy and less energy, because I'm getting less energy and less energy. So I'm gonna just do my bare minimal processes, burn the minimal fuel that I can to survive. And so this is actually an interesting study on the Biggest Loser participants, that their metabolic rates, so the calories, the energy that they were burning off, was significantly reduced for the next 6 years after they participated in the Biggest Loser study. So they affected their metabolism so much, turned down the rate, like their calorie burn, their energy uses by so much, it lasted for 6 years. Increase in binging and cravings. So it's another survival technique. There was a really, do I have this stuff up there? No. There's a really interesting study with a group of men, actually, which is kind of nice because a lot of times we hear about women dieting, right? So it's kind of like goes along with being, or if you're, identify as a female, goes with the territory, right? Like you must be dieting forever or you're not doing it good enough. And so the study in men, They were on, I think it was 1,500 calories, which isn't even that restrictive for some of the diets out there, right? Like there are really low calorie diets. And the effects were so profound with them reporting loss of control. Some of them broke out of the facility to go get food and to binge. Out of control thoughts of foods that they wanted. Their conversations turned to recipes, what foods they love. So they were speaking about, thinking about, craving food so heavily from that calorie restriction. And I wish I quoted that study because it's really so fascinating. So that's just another reaction to that famine or deprivation state that your body doesn't understand. It's just trying to protect you. So number 4 is a pretty big one. Premature death and is increased death from heart disease or developing heart disease. So that's like, wait, whoa, I thought we were supposed to diet. I thought we were supposed to be on a cardiac diet, a low cal diet. I thought we were supposed to lose weight for cardiac health. So this is the Framingham Heart Study, which is another really interesting study. 32-year long study with over 3,000 participants. And so it focused on the idea of yo-yo dieting. So everybody heard yo-yo dieting. Everyone's like, so it found this on the web. It brought up yo-yo dieting. So it's that cycle we were just talking about, right? Wanting to be thin, restricting, dieting, losing weight, loss of control, regaining the weight, and going around and around just like a yo-yo, back and forth, back and forth. So regardless of the initial weight, any indication of yo-yo dieting or that rebound weight gain was predictive of an increase, and it's a large increase of heart disease. It's quite profound. So there's actually another article that I just thought of that that shows some numbers where yo-yo diet or dieters had a higher statistic of developing cardiovascular disease than a population who stayed in an obese BMI. So that's quite amazing, right, to talk about in this culture that we're in where, you know, you're going to get cardiovascular disease unless you are thin. You're going to get it unless you diet, unless you restrict. So that's pretty amazing. Atrophy of biological cues. So hunger and fullness, which we'll talk about in a minute, are natural biological cues that tell you when your body needs fuel and when your body is done fueling, right? We like to ignore them. And so dieting, you can actually lose those senses. There are people that I've met with regularly who say, well, I'm not hungry till like 1 o'clock. And then we talk about how they binge at night. Right? They can't stop eating. They can't stop snacking. They have a really big dinner. And so, we talk about, okay, well, what's happening in the morning? Your body has gone 8 hours, maybe 9, 10, 11 hours without fuel, but now has spent weeks or months or years delaying or restricting to really low calorie in the morning, that then when you finally allow yourself to eat, it goes out of control because it's saying, okay, if this keeps happening every day, I need to get all these calories, all these carbs, all this fat, all this protein that my body needs in this short window of time. So we can reteach hunger. Learning fullness is quite challenging, but it's totally possible. It's something we also see with, significant disordered eating and eating disorders, especially anorexia nervosa, is a loss of hunger. And it's one of the main or first treatment points is first, you need to eat on a schedule so that your body can relearn hunger cues. And ghrelin and leptin are those. I like to bring this up because it's so hard for some people to accept that our body knows when and how to fuel and when to stop, because we're so deeply rooted in this belief that we need to be following someone else's plan to be healthy, right? We need to be following someone else's idea And when I say that, I mean, Atkins, keto, paleo, intermittent fasting, Noom, Weight Watchers, right? Someone else is making those rules. Someone else is coming up. No one's asking when you're hungry and when you're full. So it's really just, it's such a kind of out of body experience because we've ignored those as natural, human.
I understand.
Oh my goodness. Moving my hands too much. We've been taught to not trust our bodies, especially around nutrition and food. And so to get back to that place where we're saying, no, my body can tell me when I'm hungry and when I'm full, it's quite a leap of faith. It produces a lot of fear when we start talking about it. But that's really the most natural way to eat. I'm not saying it's not complicated or that we haven't kind of developed some behaviors or had food experiences or food traumas that have led to that being really, really challenging. Again, that's another huge topic just on its own. Okay. So no one likes to talk about the psychological effects of dieting, right? There can't be any. They're so healthy, right? Like getting thin, super healthy. It's one of the things that makes me the most angry about bariatric surgery is that there are so few studies that track patients, participants in bariatric surgery after 3 to 5 years, mostly even after 2. There's barely any psychological research done on people who have had bariatric surgery. And yet we're using it as one of the main tools to treat the condition of obesity. And now, does anybody keep up with the American Pediatric Association? Yeah, man, what a day for dietitians out there. In the last month, it was probably just a few weeks ago, right? The American Pediatric Association went from their view on weight and weight loss in children to being that we don't talk about weight loss. We support healthy lifestyle. We support activity, varied diets, cooking at home. To their position now is that they support bariatric surgery for children as young as 13. Yeah, thank you. Weight loss drugs, including omeprazole. That's that one now. It's so popular. It's actually a diabetes drug. People are using it for weight loss. Injections that are needed for a lifetime. You don't go on it for a little while and then stop. And weight loss counseling for as young as 2 years old. So when we talk about, when I mentioned this healthcare system, it's quite broken. But yeah, it's quite broken. I got to get back on track and go on for that for a long time. Okay, so psychological effects. Anyone who's in the field of nutrition who ignores the psychological component of nutrition is being obtuse, right? There's a huge psychological component to what we eat, why we eat, when we eat. And so there is a link to dieting and developing an eating disorder. Dieters are 8 times more likely to develop an eating disorder by the age of 15. And so you'd say, wait, there's dieters before they're 15? Yes, there's horribly tragic studies out there about people as young children, as young as 5 and 6, talking about needing to restrict, needing to change their body. And so, yeah, it's quite a predicament. Dieting is now considered one of the highest risk factors for developing not an RD, an ED. So I was like, registered dietitian. For developing an eating disorder. So yeah, notice I didn't say anything other than dieting. So one diet, any type of dieting to lose weight is the biggest predictor of developing an eating disorder. Our current diet culture idolizes orthorexic behaviors. Has anybody heard orthorexia? Yeah, it's a relatively new term. It's not diagnosable yet, it's not in the clinical, it's not a medical diagnosis like anorexia nervosa, bulimia nervosa, binge eating disorder, but it's considered like an up and coming, that fourth kind of, there's many more eating disorders, but that, that next component of an eating disorder. And orthorexia is but simply put, an overwhelming obsession with the concept of health, the concept of thin, the concept of perfect nutrition. And, in my head, my brain just wants to explode, first of all, but my brain wants to go, stop, right? That is all our society tells us to be, right? That is what our media is telling us to be. Our doctors are telling us to be, is thinner, eating better, right? Eating more healthful foods, calorie counting, checking labels. And so it's really just this cyclical, very detrimental spot to be in. Dieting also correlates with feelings of failure, low self-esteem, and social anxiety. And this, this one slide could have been a lot bigger. I say that about every slide. It could be a whole presentation about the psychological components of nutrition and dieting, right? But that's in brief. So popular weight loss diets, so many out there. These are the ones that I just kind of find. I kind of change the slide every time I do this because it seems like I mentioned one and people are like, no, people don't do that anymore. So intermittent fasting is pretty big. No carbs will never die, unfortunately. It just gets a new name every 10 to 15 years, right? Atkins, keto, clean eating, and then Noom and other apps. So yeah.
Your body when you restrict your carbs.
Yeah. So lots of things. When we think about nutrition, if you can picture a pie, I'm a very visual person. If you think of a pie chart as your macronutrients. So your macronutrients are fat, carbs, protein, right? That's what gives us energy. Those three things. Alcohol also gives energy, but it's not a macronutrient. So we typically say 50% of your pie, of your circle, comes from carbs. And then just because I like simple math, we're going to say 25% fat, 25% protein. That's a little bit, whatever. So if you take carbs from 50 to 25%, what happens to fat and protein? They have to go up, right? They have to meet that other, they fill up your chart, they fill up the pie, right? So what do we know about eating at a high level of fat? So much increased cardiovascular disease. It puts a increased load on your liver. Protein too. People love to say, or people don't want to think about protein as being bad because we can't demonize the last macronutrient. We've already demonized carbs and fat. But excess intake of protein has negative consequences. Our body stores it as fat, right? We don't necessarily store fat as fat, right? We've thankfully gotten away from the low fat 80s, 90s. Some of you are too young to even be alive in that period. But low fat was the thing. That was it. Don't eat fat, right? But that's the same concept. You took out fat and what got bigger? Your carbs and your protein, right? So anytime you take out a macronutrient, you're eating in excess the other two macronutrients that have negative outcomes. Excess protein stored as fat. Excess protein hard on your kidneys. Right, your kidneys can become damaged, and that can affect blood pressure and so many things. So that's really like the basic part of it. When you restrict carbs, there's the keto flu, right? Your body can respond really negatively because your brain likes carbohydrates. Your brain prefers carbohydrates. Your brain works best on carbohydrates. I'm going to die on that podium. Without it, we start pulling fat and protein. And so it's interesting because people who've been on keto for a while actually lose a large amount of muscle mass. right? But we don't talk about that because, oh, the scale, the weight, the number is going down, right? So yeah, lots of negative, the cravings, right? I mean, tell me one person on keto who doesn't struggle with cravings. Tell me one person who diets who doesn't say, I have a sweet tooth, I'm addicted to carbs, I'm addicted to sugar. Like, no, you're not. You're just not giving your body any of them. Right. And so your body wants them, right? You know, I meet with people and they'll say, oh, you know, I feel like I'm doing everything right, but I can't help but want sugar at night. So we go over their breakfast. Their breakfast is like a quarter of the size it should be. Low carbs, they're eating a salad with tuna on it for lunch. And then at dinner, they want pasta and potatoes and cookies, right? Yeah, your body has not had enough carbohydrates in the first 3/4 of the day, right? And it's going to make up for it. Our bodies are way smarter than we give them credit for. So does that help? Okay. Intermittent fasting, I'll touch on quickly. Okay. If we go back and let ourselves say, my body knows how to feed itself when I'm hungry, right? Hunger is a natural reaction. It's not bad. It's my hormonal regulation, my biological way of telling myself that I'm hungry and that I need fuel. Oh, wait, you can only eat from 9 to 4 p.m. Like, come on, our body does not time in and time out, right? It's not on a clock, right? A cupcake at 6:58 p.m. is the same cupcake at 7:01 p.m., right? It is the same cupcake as 1 a.m. in the morning. So yeah, there might be times where your body digests slower. If you're really stressed out, if you're sick, right? But it doesn't work on a clock. In fact, your body does a lot of metabolic functions at night. And my favorite thing is everyone already intermittent fast. You sleep at night and you're not eating, right? And so then you wake up and your body wants to get its nutrition in through the day. Lots of other things, but we're way running out of time. So I'm not going to harp on some of these. Yes, noon is a diet. That is one other thing I'll say. It gives you a really low calorie range. Doesn't take into consideration a lot of other physiological process that's going on, isn't individualized. It's just a really creative marketing scheme to look different from every other diet out there. If something strikes you up here that you want to ask about, there's no class after this, so I'm just trying to get through content and then we'll have lots of time, but we'll have time for presentations. So protein supplements or supplementation. You know, a lot of people really harp on, well, I need this in my diet. I need this. I must be, you know, deficient in this. And really the biggest key is, you know, are you someone who misses out on a huge category of food? Maybe medically, maybe you know, or culturally, you know, you don't eat something, maybe you were raised a vegan. Not saying vegans can still be, you know, very healthy, but if you're not informed about how to get all the nutrients, if you can be lacking in some. So protein supplements, everybody who goes to the gym wants to be on a protein supplement. Do they need to? No, right? If you have a really hard time eating protein, maybe it's a digestive reason. Maybe you really don't like proteins, right? Like maybe you don't like eggs, you don't like dairy, you're lactose intolerant, and you don't like meat. Okay, you know, then maybe you could work in some other protein supplements in your life. The biggest thing that I want to kind of hit home here is that they're not regulated. Supplements are not regulated. Vitamins and minerals are not regulated. So you could be getting 2 similar size cartons of protein powder, and they could be very different on what's inside. There's a really cool website, cleanlabelproject.org, and it reports incidences of findings if there's been some sort of not great contaminant or chemical or non-food material in protein supplement. And so, if you're really passionate about getting a protein supplement, you can look there. Another population that benefits is the elderly. So, I have a contract with a nursing home, and your appetite, it just diminishes in the elderly, and there's lots of other things, medications, dementia, that can kind of interrupt normal nutrition, and having a protein supplement can be really helpful in that population. So these are really common. These are really common vitamins and minerals, and some of the ones that we tend to need more. So folic acid is needed in pregnancy, prevents neural tube defects. It's really, really, really hard, if not impossible, to get enough folic acid and absorb it just from food sources. Vitamin D. Geographically, we are at a disadvantage for vitamin D because of our sun, or lack thereof. And so a lot of people are low in vitamin D here, right? And that could happen anywhere, but that could be something. But if you go to the doctor and your vitamin D level is normal, do you need to take vitamin D? No, right? There's a lot of people taking a lot of vitamin D who don't know what their vitamin D levels are. Iron is one of the only vitamins or minerals that your body can't replace with food when you're deficient. So most other vitamins and minerals, when you start, eating more varied foods, you have a really varied diet, your body will replenish that store. But iron almost always needs medical intervention just by taking iron. Did you know that you should not have dairy when you take your iron supplement, because it will disrupt the absorption and use of your iron? And then calcium, some people need it in pregnancy, if you are at risk for osteoporosis. If you have a milk allergy or are vegan, those are some reasons too that you might possibly need some calcium.
Would you tell him does iron have to be taken without calcium?
Yes.
And you say with it?
Yes, I knew I put that somewhere. Yeah, so to help your body absorb and use vitamin D, you should try to eat it around the same time that you have some other foods that have calcium, dark leafy greens, dairy products, things like that. So you could just swallow your pill in, a glass of milk. And make sure you have some dark leafy greens in your diet. There's other vegetables that have calcium, but those are the higher ones. Iron is disrupted. Iron absorption and processing is disrupted by calcium. So you don't want to have foods with calcium when you're taking
So you
iron.
wouldn't take your iron supplement at the same time you take your vitamin
Correct.
D supplement.
If you're taking your vitamin D, if you don't have to drink it with milk, but if you're doing both, that might be something to think about, right? That's one reason why just going to a vitamin store and just picking a bunch of vitamins isn't always helpful, right? There's some other information that you need. So quickly, there are certain populations that do need, or that are more likely to need supplementation, and that's not the average Joe, right? It's not just a college-age student. Pregnancy, breastfeeding, heavy periods, alcohol abuse, excessive alcohol intake really disrupts how you absorb and process nutrients, especially vitamins and minerals, because we do that in the liver. Crash dieters are people who are on really strict diets, the elderly, chronically ill or malnourished, some vegetarians or vegans. Especially, it seems, there are some vegetarians who kind of pick it up because it's popular or trendy, right? And, I've met vegetarians who are like, okay, well, I eat French fries all day long. And it's like, okay, well, you're not getting protein there, right? So you might need to think about where you're getting your protein from. Other, you know, a lot of people really do a great job educating themselves and get those nutrients. If you have severe food allergies, like severe, I'm talking like the people who are allergic to like eggs, gluten, soy, you know, everything together. And then it really cuts out a ton of food. And then a malabsorptive problem. If you have a digestive disease, IBS, IBD, celiac disease, cystic fibrosis, so the digestive end, where you might be excreting a lot, you might need to replace that. Okay, we don't have time for those. Okay. Probiotics and prebiotics also are well, you don't really supplement with prebiotics, but probiotic supplements are really popular. We can very successfully get probiotics with foods. Probiotics are in yogurt. Look for a container that says live cultures. So Greek yogurt has a higher concentration of probiotics than non-Greek yogurt. What do you call that? Normal yogurt? Fermented foods, sauerkraut, pickles, tempeh, kimchi, kombucha, I did have kefir in there. So you can, and eating a diverse diet of vegetables and fruits and whole grains. So did somebody ask something? Okay. Prebiotics we don't talk about a lot, but if prebiotics are the food to probiotics. So if you're having a diet really low in prebiotics, but you're taking probiotics, it's really likely that they're doing nothing. They're not being activated. They have no food. Lots and lots of sources for prebiotics, plant-based. So another great reason to get those fruits and vegetables in. Anything else about prebiotics? I think we're good. So when we talk about taking probiotics, a couple things that I just words for the weary, is that the saying? Not all probiotics are that helpful. There's actually some really interesting studies out there showing that most over-the-counter probiotics are dead. So probiotics are supposed to be live bacteria. And when they tested pill form, like Culturelle, just those things you can grab, they were unable to be activated. So you're taking nothing. You're just paying for a capsule, right, of dead bacteria. And so, really getting it from a source like a doctor can be more helpful. There's also I'm losing my words, a way of thinking, or, providers who say, unless you know what specific strand of bacteria you need, taking a probiotic is super helpful, right? Because there's kind of groups, conglomerates of different bacteria that relate to each other. And so a probiotic might be providing you with, like, say, the A group, and you might be missing the C group, right? So that wasn't super helpful to be taking it. Okay, last piece. Yeah.
So if we take the prebiotic as the probiotic, when do we take the probiotic?
So I actually don't know specifics on that. I've always said it's good to eat at the same time. So prebiotics, bananas are a good source of prebiotics, and yogurt, Greek yogurt's a good source of probiotics. So having a snack of a Greek yogurt and a banana. Then your body's getting it together, right? If you're eating your probiotics in the morning and then at 9 p.m. at night, you're saying, all right, I need to eat some prebiotics. Probably not helping, not that helpful. Okay, navigating, this is the last little chunk here. Oh, no, it's not, but that's okay. So navigating the world of supplements. Does it make sense? Does what it's claiming to do make sense? Is there actual research? I'm not saying a friend of a friend's uncle took it and yeah, have a good day, thanks for coming, and his diabetes got better, right? Is there actual scientific research? Is it safe? The biggest one that I really, really want, if you take something away from today, it's this. Do I feel better taking it? Right? Do I feel different taking it? If not, there's no point in taking it. And I'm not talking about medications, right? There's lots of medications that our doctor recommends that don't make us feel physically different. But if you're taking something to improve digestive health, like a probiotic, and it does not improve your digestive health, you know, what in reality, what's the purpose of taking that? All right, we're going to skip unfortunately skipping over detox and cleansing, which is sad because I have some really silly colon cleansing stories to share. If you stick around. Okay, so, but they said it would make me healthier. So this is the section on navigating all this information that's floating around. Navigating nutrition in the media. So here's kind of how I tackle if I see a new commercial or a new ad or a new email, some sort of new nutrition information. Here's kind of my thought process that I wanted to share with you. Okay, questions to ask. Who is giving me this information? So is there a bias, right? You know, I always come, well, today I didn't, but now I will. I normally, you know, talk in some form about red meat or beef or farming. And I say, that's my bias, right? Like I am a farmer. I grew up around farms. I support agriculture. Can I support you as a vegan? Sure. You know, I'm not gonna say you're doing anything wrong. I'm gonna try to make you the happiest, healthiest person I can be, right? But if, you know, Soybean Farmers United funds a study on why soy protein is better than animal protein, I'd have that in mind, right? Because it's in their best interest for those findings to show that soybeans are superior. Are they being paid? Not like I'm being paid to give you this information. You know, I get paid if I see a client. Are they being paid to tell you that this green veggie powder smoothie drink is going to cure all your ailments? Are they selling something? If they're selling something, run the other way. If you ever see a nutrition professional who is selling something that is not where you want to be, it's against our code of ethics as registered dietitians to promote or sell a product, right? So there are registered dietitians who do, but that's one of the biggest differences I think, well, one of the differences I see between someone who calls himself a nutritionist or a wellness expert and then someone who has a credential like a dietitian or a nurse or a doctor, right, is the doctor can say, okay, I need you to take this medication. Well, that can be icky too, because we can get into the healthcare system and how practices are provided financially for giving out certain drugs, which we won't go down that road. But if you're being pushed a product, I'd be super skeptical. Is there any research? Oh boy. If someone's telling you anecdotal information, which means stories or people's opinions or people's experiences, that's not real research. Okay, real research is experimental. It has an actual experimental setup and design. It's reviewed. It's often published. It should be published, right, to be taken seriously. We'll move on. Correlative data. Can anybody think why correlative data would be harmful, other than the obvious point I have up there? Yeah.
I was gonna say, like, as you have like a very variable, but it doesn't actually predict the relationship.
Absolutely. It's not finite. It's not proven, right? It's not the X causes Y. We see a trend of when people run in the morning, they also have lower risk of diabetes. It's correlated. Running in the morning is correlated with a lower incidence of diabetes. So many holes in that where you could say, okay, were these people all female? Were they all male? Were they under 20? Were they over 70? Right. So there's so many other, are they vegetarian? Are they meat eaters? Are they health professionals? Or, I always take it and say, that's interesting. I think about it, but I don't say, oh my gosh, okay, I need to start running in the morning to prevent diabetes.
But
Okay.
isn't it true that, I mean, the good example of this is the Mediterranean diet, which was a correlative thing, but I do believe it's been confirmed that there, that the Mediterranean diet, because it's high, because it has the right kind of fats,
Yes,
and it has vegetables, and that kind of stuff, that the Mediterranean diet was, they kind of looked to see why are these people healthier, and they
Right.
came up with.
Yeah, so I would definitely say there's a strong correlation between the Mediterranean diet and some really positive health outcomes. Unfortunately, the Mediterranean diet has been turned into a diet.
Oh, yeah.
Right. And so we've kind of distorted some of the components of the Mediterranean diet, including the fact that we don't live in the Mediterranean.
Mhm.
Right. And so that's a huge hole in the correlation, right? People living in the Mediterranean, eating that style of diet had positive health outcomes. Do aspects of that diet lead to health benefits? Yes, right? Like the omega-3 fatty acids. But there's a really interesting study that just showed people, and this was in my last presentation, I'm drawing some blanks, but the sum of it was supporting red meat consumption for heart health. That was my last presentation, was on heart health, right? And that's a big conspiracy. And I couldn't get through the talk without mentioning red beef, because I'm a farmer. And there was 3 really interesting studies, and one was a Mediterranean diet that included red beef regularly, if not daily, and it had the same outcomes, if not improved outcomes on heart health. Right. So yes, does the Mediterranean correlate with healthy outcomes? Yes, but other ways of eating do as well.
Yeah.
Right. And are there people who eat the Mediterranean who still have negative health outcomes? Yes, because going in excess of fat, going in excess of even unsaturated fats can be detrimental. Like if you were to remove all your carbohydrates, right, and eat really high fat diet. So there's always there's a lot of nuance between one way of eating being the healthiest. Okay. So these are my 4 takeaway tips for navigating any type of nutrition information out there. For making your nutrition circle more pleasant. Curate your social media. Right? If there's someone that you're following on Facebook or Instagram or TikTok, or getting emails from a website or a person that kind of goes against any of your ethical boundaries, that is selling a product, get rid of them, right? Like you can curate what you see. It's like the saying, you're most similar to the 5 people that you're closest to, right? Like your 5 closest friends or the 5 people in your inner circle really kind of influence the person that you are. That's similar to what you're absorbing, not nutrient based, what you're absorbing mentally or internally as far as information. Do not believe nutrition TV is on commercial. Period. Always check for credentials. There's a lot of people out there who are really good at marketing, who have absolutely zero medical, health, nutrition experience. Anyone who tells you to eliminate a macronutrient, which are fat, protein, carbs, or an entire food group. Like you have to eliminate dairy to be healthy. You have to eliminate meat to be healthy. You have to eliminate, I don't know, what else do people eliminate? Butter to be healthy is wrong. Period. The end. Any questions? Any more questions? Now that we just went like for hours and hours. Yeah.
Okay, so protein and getting older, because I actually just ordered a book that basically is going to tell me it's not, this is science, this is not a diet book. but I know it's gonna say I need to be eating more protein because I'm over 50. And you said in nursing homes, so what's the, what's the thing?
How old is old?
Well, yeah, there's a difference between 50 and 75.
Oh, absolutely.
Nutrition. Like, are you asking me for how much protein? So I can't really give you a set amount without sitting down and talking to you first,
Okay.
right? But I, without knowing anything about you, like I don't know any health conditions or
Right,
anything.
right.
I think a safe place to start is 60 grams.
Okay,
Right, 60 grams of protein. What does that look like? An egg is 7 grams of protein. Okay, a Greek yogurt is 10 to 14 grams of protein. Ounce piece of meat, so a deck of carbs, or like a palm of a peanut, is 7, 8 grams of protein. Typically 8 grams is considered a serving, but like that 7, 8 notion. So 3 ounces of protein is 8 grams. 2 tablespoons of peanut butter is 8 grams. Okay, so looking at how much protein you need, chart out where you are throughout the day. I hesitate to talk about numbers because I think it leads to a lot of tracking and kind of fixation. If you're eating protein at every meal and having a snack with protein, you should be really good. If you're feeling energized, like you can perform reasonable daily activities, your skin and your hair and your nails are healthy, you're very likely getting enough protein. Right? Because a lack of protein a lot of times shows up in weakness, fatigue, dry hair, nail, skin. Does that make sense? But that's again, if they're, people with any type of kidney concerns, some medications, that can vary that up. Can't really get a number without. Anything else? Yeah.
Okay, so I have one, I just wanted to make sure I wasn't.
Yeah, like,
Okay, so I've talked to you before, I have celiacs and dairy sensitivity, so when I have things that fit my small window of what I can enjoy and taste really nice, I can binge. And like I just will eat too much of it and then I feel crappy after.
Yeah.
So you said we can relearn the feelings of hunger after maybe intermittent fasting or something like that. Can I relearn my limitations when and what are some tips? Tell me
for hunger and fullness or just fullness?
Well, just I did it this week. I went to a thing and there were ginger snap cookies. I haven't had ginger snap cookies since for 6, 7, 8 years.
Right.
So to have them gluten-free, I had 4 of them.
I don't consider 4 ginger snaps.
I felt really bad. It was too much for me. Maybe
you had a stomach ache or you felt guilty bad?
No, I felt stomach ache and then upset stomach bad.
I think maybe there's so many things that could be going on there.
Yeah.
Something you ate could have given you a stomach ache.
Yeah.
Do I think it was 4 ginger snap cookies? Truthfully, professionally, no.
I had a salad though. It was a salad and
Salad, yeah. Okay. I don't consider 4 ginger snap cookies a binge. I don't consider that something bad to do. I also, what happens every time you get around Thanksgiving dinner? You eat too much, right? It's really exciting. Haven't had it in a year. It's celebratory, right? Seeing those cookies that bring you happiness that you haven't had in numerous years, that's a super normal behavior. We've turned eating for celebration and eating for enjoyment into a negative event. And really there are cultures, I think it's Japanese culture, who have as a pillar of health. So we have the American guidelines for eating that are super sad. And they are. Nowhere does it mention enjoy your food. right? We're not supposed to enjoy our food. It's supposed to be healthy and miserable and cause us to be thinner. And there are other cultures who say every single food experience should be pleasurable. Like that's a pillar of health and wellness for them. Right. And we suck the fun out of all of it in the name of health. And so can we normalize having them more? Like, can you know?
But if my body, and partially is that it was maybe the sugar, right? Because I don't eat a lot of sugar lately.
That might be why
So
you.
what could I tell myself? Maybe like, I can like say, oh, hypothetically, I'm going to remember that this made me feel bad at 4, maybe I'll stop at 3, like, or something like that. But is there something else that I could do? Like,
I'd say make sure you're getting enough carbohydrates throughout the day and that you're not forbidding yourself from eating dessert in other areas, right? Because that often comes out. And when you do get around something that you allow yourself to eat, that you go past fullness.
yeah.
Right. And that might be, if I had to take a guess, you don't let yourself go past fullness a lot. Like you have structure around your meals and you went past fullness with the 4 cookies and then your stomach hurt.
Maybe.
You know, so I think normalizing some of those other things though, making sure you're having carbohydrates, because it's just like the idea of craving carbs or being addicted to carbs or not having self-control around carbs. It almost always related to restricting and not eating enough throughout the day. But then when you finally let go, your body's like, and brain are like, oh yeah, I'm gonna get it all in right now because tomorrow she might not let me eat that.
Especially if it's a food that has some sort of quality that makes you want to eat more of it, like
Right.
sugar, salt,
Right.
whatever the combination. Or
Yeah.
you just can't stop eating the potato chips.
Right.
Well, that's probably a bad place to go if you need more in the evening.
Yeah, well, there's a lot behind that too. If that's really what you're wanting, and then you start eating something else like carrots, your brain's not going to be happy. So then you're going to switch to something like meat and cheese.
I don't know. I like salt on carrots sometimes.
No, but to be able to open
it
that bag
matches
of
it.
Cape Cod potato chips and say, I'm gonna eat until I'm full, so I better slow down and not like consume the whole bag in 2 minutes. And just like take my time and notice when I'm actually
Yes, I like
full.
that idea too, maybe with the cookies, is to have it with my tea and like just not.
And that's a
Too
really
far
good,
out.
that's a really good point to bring up. Did you say you were at a meeting?
No, it was, well, yes, it was, but like I took 2 and ate 2 during the meeting. And then I was like leaving, I was like, those are really good. And I enjoyed it. And so I took 2 for the road and ate them, then walked back. Just like, great, right? So I didn't think, and then part of me was like, okay, Bon Appetit made them, so maybe they weren't totally gluten-free, but
Could be.
No,
Everyone-
their ginger snaps are their ginger cookies are good and gluten free. It's one of their standards. And
yeah.
they are good.
And the chocolate
Yeah.
fudge ones are really good too.
So any type of distraction really goes against our body recognizing what we're eating and what we're doing. It's one of those funny things, like, don't they say that about like how to get more exercise in, distract yourself, right? Like watch a TV show and it'll go faster. Okay, similar for eating. If you sit down with a bag of anything in front of a TV show at night, you're probably going to eat more than your body actually wants, right? So it's not the potato chips full, right? And so, and then I would say too, that there's so many steps to that. Like, okay, so you were distracted. There's so much to that, but yeah. But I don't think it was the cookies' fault. I think there's lots of other things going on. Because food doesn't have morality, right? Right? It's not good and bad. It's just food.
And you're also okay, Janelle,
Yes.
for eating the 4.
No, I just felt bad. And then I'm like, do I not eat them next time? You know what I mean? Like I kind of sat there and I was like.
But you could do an experiment knowing that, right? You could do an environmentally controlled study,
Yeah.
right? At home, eat nothing else that could bother your stomach and have those cookies, have 4.
Yeah.
And see, okay, is it actually the cookies or was there something else going on? Was it because I had a really big stomach and raw vegetables can cause some sort of gastric distress because they're gassier and more fibrous, but I'm blaming it on the cookies because it's not the salad's fault.
Right.
It can't be.
Well, I mean, I eat salad there every week.
Yeah.
So, you know, it was like, that was kind of standardized.
Yeah.
Exposure. Thank you.
Anything else?
So many questions. We're gonna take it.
I mean, I'm gonna eat, so if you want to
Yeah,
stay and
yeah.
ask questions.
Thank you.
Yeah,
you.
of
Very
course.
good.
Thank you. Thank you all for coming.